The galaxy stood at the precipice, once more. The Ascendant had proven themselves to be a ruthless and cunning adversary, quickly re-establishing a terrifying grip on the outer rim and threatening to destabilize the fragile peace that had taken root in the wake of the Kramari Empire's fall. Their message was clear. The old order was gone, and they were the only ones capable of bringing true stability through strength. But they weren't just trying to conquer the galaxy. They were determined to reshape it entirely, with themselves at the helm. As the Ascendant expanded their influence, chaos spread like wildfire. Colonies that had once flourished under the protection of the rebellion now found themselves at the mercy of the new faction's brutal tactics. Systems that had been liberated from the Kramari yoke were slipping back into oppression. The fragile alliances between the different species of the rebellion seemed on the verge of unraveling, and many feared that the galaxy was once again on the brink of total war. Dr. Lena Vasquez, now at the center of the galactic struggle, knew the time for negotiation and rebuilding was over. Despite her deep desire to see the galaxy move beyond endless conflict, she realized that to stop the Ascendant, they would have to fight, harder and smarter than they ever had before. The rebellion, still scarred from the battle with the Kramari, would need to be reforged into something stronger, something capable of facing a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered. The first step was to unite the fractured factions. The Korna, led by their fierce warlords, were ready for battle, but they demanded action, rapid and unrelenting. The Vorten, cautious as ever, still hesitated to fully commit. And the Merak, hungry for revenge, stood poised to strike, but they were divided on how to proceed. Dr. Vasquez convened a summit, desperate to bring together the leaders of the rebellion and rally them against the Ascendant threat. Admiral Raydan, who had always believed in the power of military strength, led the call for a full-scale invasion of the Ascendant's strongholds. But Captain Alara Hayes, still haunted by the cost of past wars, warned that they would need more than firepower. They would need to outthink the Ascendant, exploiting their weaknesses rather than just meeting them in battle. As the summit dragged on, tensions were high. It seemed as though the galaxy was once again poised for a civil war among its own liberators. That was until the moment when Vasquez, who had remained mostly silent, stood and spoke the words that shifted the course of the rebellion forever. "We cannot afford to fight as we once did," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "The Ascendant are not just another army to defeat. They are a new breed, born from the ashes of the Kramari. We can't just defeat them with might. We must outlast them. We must show the galaxy that we are more than just the sum of our forces. We are more than just an army of different species. We are the galaxy's future. And if we can prove that, we can defeat them." Her words struck a chord with the leaders gathered around the table. For the first time since the rebellion's victory, they recognized that this new fight would require more than just tactical brilliance. It would require unity, not just in force, but in spirit. The very thing that had made the rebellion such a powerful force was its diversity, its shared dream of a galaxy where every species could thrive. With a renewed sense of purpose, the rebellion forged a new coalition, a united front determined to face the Ascendant head-on. The Korna warlords, now unified under a single banner, pledged their fleets. The Vorten sent their finest diplomats and engineers to coordinate with the rebels. The Merak, though driven by vengeance, agreed to channel their anger into a focused strike against the Ascendant. In the heart of the Ascendant stronghold, Lord Malgar, the true leader of the faction, watched with growing concern as the rebellion's forces gathered. His confidence, built on years of manipulation and fear, began to waver. The Ascendant were strong, but they lacked the unity that the rebellion now possessed. They were fractured by their own arrogance, believing that their strength alone could carry them to victory. The time for reckoning came when Dr. Vasquez, along with Admiral Raydan and Captain Hayes, led the United Fleet on a final, desperate mission to infiltrate the heart of the Ascendant's defenses. Their goal was simple: destroy the heart of the Ascendant network and cut off their ability to coordinate. But this time, it wasn't just about brute force, it was about strategy, deception, and unity. The Ascendant had grown overconfident in their technological superiority, but they had failed to account for the rebels' newfound resolve. The battle that ensued was unlike any other. The rebels used their combined strength to outmaneuver the Ascendant at every turn. Dr. Vasquez's brilliant plan to cripple the Ascendant's central command was executed flawlessly, as she worked alongside engineers and soldiers to breach the main command center deep within the heart of their base. As their flagship began to crumble under the weight of the rebellion's assault, the Ascendant found themselves trapped in a web of their own making. In the final moments of the conflict, Lord Malgar made a last-ditch attempt to activate a doomsday weapon that could have wiped out the galaxy's fleets in one fell swoop. But Captain Hayes, leading a daring strike team, reached the control room just in time to stop him. With Malgar's death, the Ascendant were thrown into disarray. The rebellion had won, not just through force, but through unity, perseverance, and a shared belief in a future beyond endless war. As the dust settled and the victorious fleet made its way home, the leaders of the galaxy stood together. Korna, Vorton, Merak, and human alike, finally united under the banner of peace. The galaxy was scarred, yes, but it was still alive. Dr. Vasquez looked out into the vastness of space, knowing that though the war had ended, the work of rebuilding the galaxy was just beginning. And this time, they would build it together. The dawn of a new era had come, and for the first time, it felt like hope, true hope, was within their reach. The news of the human victory over the Zalnari spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Galactic Alliance's leaders, having been so confident in their supremacy, were now forced to grapple with the implications of what had transpired. A species they had dismissed as primitive had just humiliated one of their most feared enemies. The question on every mind was, how? The Galactic Council convened immediately, summoning the highest-ranking members of its various species to discuss the situation. The mood was tense, and the ambassadors exchanged nervous glances. The Zoran ambassador, who had initially dismissed humanity's potential, was now unusually quiet, his once confident demeanor cracked. Counselor Drakner, a towering and fiercely intelligent Siren, leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. "We cannot ignore this. The Zalnari were supposed to be unstoppable. If the humans can defeat them, what does that mean for the rest of us? What if they turn their eyes on us next?" "Calm down, Drakner," the Zoran ambassador, Liaros, said, his tone sharp. "It was a fluke. The humans were lucky. The Zalnari's tactics were sloppy, and the humans had an advantage in terrain. Nothing more." But there was a quiet murmur in the room. More than one ambassador was uneasy. Even Liaros couldn't mask the flicker of doubt in his eyes. There was something about the humans that defied expectations at every turn. Their unrelenting drive, their refusal to bow to superior forces, their ability to think outside of the box, these were not qualities that could be ignored. At the far end of the chamber, a silent figure stood, observing the exchange. Captain Emilia Thompson. She had been invited as a representative of humanity, though she wasn't sure if her presence would be seen as a symbol of the humans' boldness or their foolishness. When the council finally quieted, she stepped forward. "Perhaps we should let the results speak for themselves," she said, her voice steady but carrying an undeniable edge of defiance. "The Zalnari are no longer a threat to our people. We stand by our victory, and we stand ready to offer our alliance. But we will not be pawns in your political games. Respect is earned, not given. We won't kneel." A few ambassadors shifted uncomfortably at her words, and the council members exchanged yet another series of glances. Some still harbored doubts about humanity's potential for long-term success, but the weight of the human resolve was undeniable. For the first time in centuries, an unconsidered race had done something unexpected, something that could not be easily explained away. Liaros, sensing the shifting tide, tried to regain some semblance of control. "Humanity may have won this one battle, but you have no experience in galactic warfare. You have no understanding of the politics at play here. You may be capable fighters, but the galaxy is far more complex than you realize." "We understand the stakes," Thompson replied, her gaze unwavering. And we don't need to be lectured on the complexities of galactic politics. We're here to work with you, but we'll also make our own decisions. If that's a problem for the Alliance, then so be it. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling on the Council like a heavy burden. For the first time, the galaxy's most powerful races realized that humanity was not only a force to be reckoned with, it was a wild card, a variable they could not predict or control. But while the Council debated, the situation on the frontier was already changing. The human military, emboldened by their victory, began to expand their influence in ways that alarmed the Alliance. They weren't just sitting idly by, waiting for permission. They were establishing new colonies, making military alliances with other lesser species, and using their technological ingenuity to advance at an unprecedented rate. The Alliance had been right about one thing: humanity's drive was undeniable. But what the Council hadn't anticipated was how quickly humanity would leverage that drive to expand their presence in the galaxy. The Zelnari defeat was only the beginning. The humans had tasted victory, and they were hungry for more. Reports started to come in from the border systems. Human ships, well-equipped and highly organized, were staking claims on strategic positions. And, even more troubling, they were making allies out of races previously considered untouchable by the established powers of the Alliance. The humans' raw ambition and pragmatism were drawing in various smaller factions, creating a new network of influence that was rapidly spreading across the galaxy. The Galactic Alliance's grip on its territories was slipping, and they were beginning to realize that humanity's rise couldn't be stopped by their usual methods. Diplomatic pressure, covert sabotage, or intimidation. All of it seemed to fail in the face of humanity's relentless drive. Back in the heart of the Alliance's power, the Council knew that something had to be done. Humanity had become more than just a curiosity. They had become a threat. The question now was whether they could stop the humans before their influence spread too far. But one thing was clear: they had underestimated the human species, and that mistake might just cost them the galaxy. In the days that followed, the Galactic Alliance was gripped by an uneasy tension. Council sessions grew longer, and the once confident leaders of the galaxy's most powerful races found themselves wrestling with an inconvenient truth: humanity could no longer be ignored. What had begun as a mere curiosity was rapidly evolving into a complex problem that demanded immediate attention. The Zoran, who had initially dismissed humanity's potential, now found themselves reluctantly acknowledging their intelligence and resourcefulness. Their diplomats, once aloof and detached, were now under pressure to devise strategies to mitigate the growing human influence. Liaros, the Zoran ambassador, found his previously unshakable confidence shaken, replaced by a quiet anxiety. He had long championed the notion that the galaxy's order was invulnerable, but the humans' unpredictable tactics were like a crack in the system. Captain Thompson's words from the Council meeting had stuck with him. "We won't kneel star." That message was clear. Humanity was not just a participant in galactic affairs. They were ready to challenge the status quo. The question now was whether the Alliance would allow them to do so without igniting a larger conflict. To counter the rise of humanity, the Galactic Council authorized a series of covert operations, each designed to destabilize human interests in various sectors of the galaxy. The idea was to isolate humanity, discredit them, and attempt to divide their growing alliances before they could expand further. If necessary, military action would be taken to suppress the humans, but the Council knew that a direct confrontation would risk triggering a full-scale war, one that no one was prepared for. The first phase of their response came in the form of a coordinated trade embargo. The Alliance sought to cut humanity off from vital resources and technological exchanges that they had previously used to fuel their rapid advancement. Star systems with significant human colonies were targeted, with harsh trade restrictions implemented on fuel, advanced minerals, and refined metals. The Alliance believed that these tactics would slow humanity's growth, stifle their technological innovation, and force them into submission. But once again, the Galactic Alliance underestimated the humans. Rather than faltering, humanity adapted. They quickly turned to their network of lesser allies, many of whom were just as eager to break free from the shackles of the Alliance's control. Human ingenuity worked overtime, creating alternative supply chains, developing new sources of energy, and even creating mining operations on barren planets previously considered uninhabitable. The Alliance embargo had, in fact, only served to fuel humanity's independence, forcing them to innovate and become even more self-sufficient. On the front lines, Captain Thompson stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, a sleek and powerful human warship, as a report came in. The embargo was starting to crumble. The human colonies had begun producing their own resources, and human fleets were growing at an unprecedented rate. Worse still for the Alliance, some of the smaller, more oppressed factions within the galaxy were joining the human cause. The fractured alliances of the oppressed species, once too weak to challenge the status quo, now found strength in their newfound partnership with humanity. They were forming a new coalition, one that was not just about resisting the Alliance's control, but about building a new galactic order. Humanity's military, while still smaller in scale compared to the grand fleets of the Alliance, had shown a remarkable capability for warfare. The humans employed guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run operations, and decoy fleets to outsmart the larger, slower vessels of the Alliance. They used psychological warfare, leaving behind traces of human presence in unexpected places and sowing chaos and confusion in the ranks of the enemy. It was in these tactics that humanity proved its most dangerous trait: unpredictability. The Galactic Alliance's vast fleets, designed for large-scale confrontations and decisive victories, were suddenly facing an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. Humanity was no longer the weak, unsuspecting species they had once been. They were a determined and crafty force that could not be anticipated. In the heart of the Alliance's core world, panic began to set in. If the humans could rally the oppressed races of the galaxy, if they could continue to leverage their alliances and ingenuity, then the status quo would collapse. The Galactic Alliance's unity would fracture. The very foundation of their empire was now threatened by a species they had once deemed inconsequential. Drakner, the Ziran counselor, now found himself at the forefront of the debate. "We can no longer afford to be passive," he growled, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "We must take action, and we must do so quickly. If humanity's influence grows unchecked, the entire galaxy could be at risk. They will not stop with the lesser races. They will come for us." The Zoran ambassador, Liaros, remained quiet for a long moment, a calculated expression on his face. "I agree. But we must approach this with caution. A direct assault on humanity could bring us closer to war. We cannot risk that yet. But we will risk it if we don't act," Drakner countered. "I say we strike preemptively. Hit their colonies, disrupt their alliances, break them before they grow too powerful." "There are those who would resist such an attack," Liaros warned. "The smaller races are already beginning to see the benefits of humanity's rise. If we attack, we risk creating a coalition of all races against us." The debate raged on, with no clear consensus. But what was evident was that the Galactic Alliance had underestimated humanity's potential once again. They had mistaken the humans' determination for weakness, their ingenuity for luck. Now, as their enemies grew stronger and their plans became bolder, the Alliance knew one thing for certain: they had made the biggest mistake of their long history. The humans were no longer an inconvenience. They were the harbingers of a new era, an era the Alliance could not control. As the Galactic Alliance scrambled to put together a more coordinated response, humanity's presence in the galaxy only deepened. Their expansion wasn't just physical, it was ideological. The human-led coalition began to grow, pulling in species from all corners of the galaxy. It wasn't just about military might anymore. Humanity had begun to inspire something even more dangerous: hope. Hope that a different order could emerge from the ashes of the Alliance's carefully controlled empire. But hope was a double-edged sword. On the edge of known space, the human colony of Epsilon 9, a once peaceful outpost, had become the center of a growing resistance movement. Here, leaders from oppressed species and human rebels gathered in secret, strategizing the overthrow of the Alliance's strongholds. They called themselves the Free Star Coalition, and their mission was clear: to dismantle the Alliance's grip on the galaxy and establish a new government, one that would give every species the autonomy they deserved. The Free Star Coalition's headquarters were hidden beneath the icy surface of Epsilon 9's largest moon. The moon's remote location, surrounded by asteroid fields and electromagnetic anomalies, made it an ideal base of operations. And there, amidst the chaos of their growing insurgency, Captain Thompson stood at the heart of it all, staring out into the void beyond the moon's frozen surface. The resistance was starting to take shape. Human ships, sleek, efficient, and surprisingly effective, patrolled the outer systems, intercepting Alliance supply lines and cutting off key trade routes. The Free Star Coalition had begun coordinating with sympathetic factions, encouraging uprisings on distant worlds. The human spirit, known for its resilience and defiance, was proving infectious. The galaxy's oppressed races, who had long been silenced, now found themselves taking up arms in a fight for their freedom. But the Alliance had not been idle. The Alliance Council, now fully aware of the growing threat posed by humanity and its new coalition, put their plans into motion. Instead of targeting the Free Star Coalition outright, they decided to strike at the heart of humanity's influence. Epsilon 9 became their primary target, its symbolic value outweighing its strategic importance. If the Coalition's headquarters were destroyed, it would send a clear message to the galaxy. The Alliance would not tolerate dissent. In the dark depths of space, the Alliance prepared its strike force, a massive fleet of warships, equipped with cutting-edge weaponry and designed for overwhelming force. But the Alliance had underestimated one thing: the human capacity for preparation. The Free Star Coalition had long known that the Alliance would eventually come for them. Using their network of informants and spies, they'd been able to monitor the movements of the Alliance fleet. Captain Thompson's intelligence officers had discovered the Alliance's plans days before the assault would begin. The Coalition had no illusions about the odds, but they knew one thing: the humans wouldn't go down without a fight. On the eve of the attack, a small human fleet led by the Odyssey and several Coalition ships made a daring move. Instead of waiting for the Alliance fleet to arrive and devastate Epsilon 9, the Free Star Coalition launched a preemptive strike. They attacked key Alliance supply convoys, disrupting the flow of resources and delaying the arrival of the massive strike fleet. The Odyssey and its allies went further. Using advanced stealth technology, the Coalition fleet infiltrated deep into Alliance-controlled space, where they initiated a series of surprise skirmishes, targeting the heart of the Alliance's military infrastructure. It was a bold and risky strategy, but it had the desired effect. The Alliance fleet, caught off guard and now stretched thin across several fronts, found itself unable to mobilize quickly enough to prevent the Coalition's movements. Back on Epsilon 9, Captain Thompson watched as the first wave of Alliance warships arrived, only to find themselves in a labyrinth of debris and resistance. The humans had prepared for this moment, using the very terrain around them as a weapon. Hidden missile silos, cloaked mines, and traps within the asteroid fields turned the Alliance's arrival into a deadly game of cat and mouse. It was no longer about overwhelming strength. It was about cleverness, resourcefulness, and a deep understanding of the stakes. The Alliance's fleet was forced into a defensive position. Their superior technology and numbers were no match for the Coalition's guerrilla tactics. What began as a mission to annihilate the resistance turned into a desperate battle for survival. On the battlefield, Captain Thompson was a force unto herself. Her fleet maneuvered with precision, launching surprise attacks that threw the Alliance off balance. She had become something of a legend among the Free Star Coalition, a symbol of humanity's tenacity, a living testament to their ability to turn the tables on the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Yet, despite the chaos, the battle for Epsilon 9 was not over. The Alliance still had a formidable advantage in terms of firepower and manpower, and while the humans had gained ground, they knew that the true fight had only just begun. The battle for Epsilon 9 was symbolic, yes, but it also held the key to the next phase of the war. If the Coalition could hold their ground, they would prove to the galaxy that they were capable of defying the very core of the Alliance's power. If they lost, it would be a devastating blow to the burgeoning rebellion. As the battle raged on, The Free Star Coalition's fate hung in the balance. Captain Thompson knew that this fight would shape the future of the galaxy. It would determine whether humanity and its allies could spark a lasting revolution, or whether the weight of the alliance's might would crush them all. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The first spark of rebellion had been lit, and it was spreading faster than anyone could have predicted. The Alliance was beginning to realize that their biggest mistake had not been underestimating humanity. It was trying to stop them once they had awakened. The battle for Epsilon 9 had been a turning point, but it was only the beginning of a much larger conflict that was now consuming the galaxy. As the Free Star Coalition celebrated their unexpected victory, they also knew that the Galactic Alliance would not let this humiliation slide. The Alliance was regrouping, and their response would be swift and brutal. Captain Thompson stood in the command center of the Odyssey, staring out at the view of the distant planet. Epsilon 9 was still burning in places from the skirmishes, but the victory had been theirs for now. However, she knew the true test was ahead. The Alliance would return, stronger and more determined than ever. They would come not just with military force, but with a renewed sense of urgency and desperation. On the other side of the galaxy, the Alliance's top leaders gathered in their war room. Drakner, the Zirin counselor, had been vocal in his criticism of the earlier failed attack on Epsilon 9. The Zoran ambassador, Liaros, stood silently by, but it was clear that even he had come to a bitter realization: humanity could not be underestimated. Drakner pounded his fist on the table, his voice a growl. The humans are not just a nuisance. They are a force. We've allowed them to gain too much ground. If we don't act decisively, we risk losing control of the entire galaxy. Liaros, though more reserved, nodded. The Free Star Coalition has proven to be more resilient than anticipated. If we continue to ignore them, they may inspire even more systems to rebel. We cannot allow that to happen. The Council was in agreement. Something drastic needed to be done. The solution came in the form of a brutal offensive, spearheaded by the Alliance's most advanced war fleets. They would not just target human colonies, they would strike at the very heart of the Free Star Coalition, dismantling it before it could expand further. The Alliance was determined to eradicate the human-led rebellion in one swift, crushing blow. The first wave of the Alliance's offensive was coordinated in secret, designed to catch the Coalition off guard. Entire human systems were decimated in a matter of days. The destruction was systematic and ruthless. Colony worlds were bombed from orbit, key supply routes were destroyed, and large portions of the Coalition's fleet were ambushed by Alliance warships lurking in the shadows. The Free Star Coalition had expected retaliation, but they had not anticipated this level of devastation. The brutality of the attack sent shockwaves through their ranks. Humanity's allies, many of them new, untested, and inexperienced, were beginning to panic. Some even began to question whether they had made a mistake aligning with such a dangerous and powerful enemy. Captain Thompson, however, stood resolute. In the wake of the Alliance's assault, she convened a war council of her own, this time with leaders from the other factions of the Free Star Coalition. The room was filled with representatives from many different races, but there was one common thread among them all. They had been crushed, and their survival depended on what happened next. "We can't afford to retreat," Thompson said, her voice low but commanding. "If we give up now, the Alliance wins. They will erase everything we've fought for. We need to fight back harder than ever." One of the human commanders, a grizzled veteran named Admiral Garrett Steele, stood up. "The Alliance has hit us hard, but we've been through worse. We can still win this, but we need to hit them where it hurts. Not just their fleets, but their core systems. We need to disrupt their ability to fight back, cut off their resources, sabotage their infrastructure, and spread chaos in their heartlands." Thompson nodded, her expression fierce. "That's the plan. We go on the offensive. We show the galaxy that the Free Star Coalition is not a target, it's a threat." The following weeks were a blur of tactics, strategy, and preparation. The Free Star Coalition's leadership was united in purpose. They would strike back. It wasn't enough to defend. They needed to take the war to the Alliance. And for the first time since the battle for Epsilon 9, the Alliance began to feel the pressure. The coalition launched a series of calculated raids against Alliance-controlled systems. Instead of focusing on direct confrontation, they targeted key infrastructure, mining operations, supply depots, power plants, and communication relays. It was a war of attrition, but it was working. The Alliance's fleets, while still overwhelmingly powerful, were increasingly bogged down by these persistent, invisible threats. They were forced to divert resources to protect their home systems rather than concentrate on defeating the coalition's scattered forces. As the raids grew bolder, morale within the Free Star Coalition soared. The rebellion wasn't just surviving, it was growing. More and more planets began to join their cause. Worlds that had once been neutral in the conflict now found themselves questioning the wisdom of continuing to support the Galactic Alliance. And within the Alliance itself, cracks were beginning to show. The more brutal the Alliance's response, the more the oppressed races of the galaxy began to resent their former rulers. Humanity's rise had become a symbol of defiance, and the Alliance's heavy-handed tactics were only serving to fuel the fire. But the Alliance, despite the setbacks, still had the upper hand in terms of firepower. They possessed advanced weapons of mass destruction, planet-killer technologies that could erase entire worlds from existence in the blink of an eye. The Free Star Coalition had no such weapons at their disposal, and Captain Thompson knew that if the Alliance resorted to these tactics, they could end the rebellion in an instant. In the midst of the chaos, a disturbing report came through. The Alliance had begun deploying their ultimate weapon, a massive, planet-destroying dreadnought known as the Vanguard, the largest and most powerful warship ever built. Its sole purpose was to wipe out entire worlds that stood in defiance of the Alliance. It was clear that the stakes had escalated. The Free Star Coalition was about to face its greatest challenge yet. With the Vanguard looming, humanity's survival, and the future of the rebellion, was on the line. And as Thompson watched her fleet prepare for the inevitable confrontation, one thought echoed in her mind. No matter what happens, we cannot lose. The galaxy needs to know that freedom cannot be extinguished. The Vanguard loomed over the galaxy like a specter, its destructive power unrivaled. The largest dreadnought ever constructed by the Galactic Alliance, it was a weapon of mass destruction capable of wiping out entire planetary systems with a single, devastating strike. News of its deployment sent shockwaves through the Free Star Coalition, and the galaxy watched with bated breath as the inevitable confrontation began to take shape. Captain Thompson knew that this moment would define everything. The Vanguard was coming for them. Its mission clear: to eliminate the Free Star Coalition, erase humanity's influence, and crush any hope for rebellion. If they failed to stop it, the galaxy would be lost. The Alliance would reassert its dominance with ruthless efficiency, and humanity's brief spark of defiance would be extinguished forever. The Free Star Coalition, though battered and outmatched, had one thing the Alliance could not predict: ingenuity. The Alliance relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers. The Coalition relied on cunning and strategy. With the Vanguard advancing toward one of their key strongholds, the Coalition devised a daring plan. It was risky, perhaps the riskiest move they'd ever made, but it was the only option left. To stand against the Vanguard, they would need to outsmart it, not outgun it. The Coalition's fleets, though smaller, were faster and more flexible. They had the element of surprise on their side. The plan was set in motion. Using a series of decoy fleets and misdirection, the Coalition's forces would lure the Vanguard into a series of false engagements, drawing it deeper into a trap. Meanwhile, Captain Thompson and her crew aboard the Odyssey would lead a strike team to the Vanguard's heart, targeting its vulnerable systems, its power core, weapon systems, and communication arrays. If they could disable the dreadnought before it could unleash its full destructive force, they might stand a chance at survival. The trap was laid. As the Vanguard drew closer to the Coalition's stronghold, the decoy fleets began to engage, staging hit-and-run attacks and feints that frustrated the Alliance forces. The Vanguard responded with predictable brutality, deploying its vast array of heavy weaponry and sweeping the decoys aside with ease. But the decoys were never meant to be the real target. They were simply distractions, bait to keep the dreadnought focused on the wrong threat. Meanwhile, in the shadows of space, Captain Thompson's team made their move. Using stealth technology and a combination of covert tactics, they managed to infiltrate the Alliance's defensive perimeter. They knew the risks. If they were detected even for a moment, the Vanguard would turn its guns on them and obliterate them in seconds. But there was no turning back now. As Thompson and her team approached the Vanguard, the scale of the ship became apparent. It was a behemoth, its hull nearly the size of a moon, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. And it was approaching the Coalition's homeworld at an alarming speed. The Odyssey and her strike team, accompanied by a handful of smaller vessels, circled the Vanguard undetected, navigating through debris fields and asteroid clusters to avoid enemy sensors. But as they closed in, the Alliance fleet began to tighten its formation, and the pressure mounted. "We're almost there," Thompson muttered, her voice steady despite the enormity of the task. "Prepare to breach the outer hull." Her team made their move. With precision and flawless timing, they deployed boarding pods to the Vanguard's underside, targeting weak points in its defenses. The human ingenuity that had defined their tactics throughout the war was on full display. This was no brute force attack. Every step was calculated, every move a testament to their ability to fight on their own terms. Inside the Vanguard, the team encountered heavy resistance from Alliance soldiers. The Alliance had expected this. They had fortified the ship's interior with elite troops, ready to defend the Dreadnought's critical systems. But the humans were ready for them. Hand-to-hand combat and close-quarters tactics quickly overwhelmed the Alliance forces. It wasn't just that the humans were skilled fighters, it was that they were adaptable. They used everything at their disposal, from environmental hazards to their own tech, to dismantle the Alliance defenses. As the team pushed deeper into the ship, the heart of the Vanguard, its central command center, came into view. Time was running out, and Thompson knew the Alliance would soon realize they were under attack. The countdown to the ship's planetary bombardment was already underway. "Thompson, we've got a problem," one of her officers reported, his voice urgent. "They've locked down the core. If we don't deactivate the security systems in the next 15 minutes, it's over." "We don't have 15 minutes," Thompson replied, her jaw set in determination. "We've got 5. Let's move." With a mix of speed, precision, and sheer determination, the team fought their way through the final defenses. They reached the core, and a final, desperate scramble to deactivate the security systems ensued. The countdown was relentless, the pressure mounting with each passing second. The moment of truth came when Thompson herself reached the control panel. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her heart pounded in her chest. She slammed her hand down on the console, overriding the security codes, and in a final burst of ingenuity, managed to disable the Vanguard's core just as the countdown reached 0. The ship went dark. The threat had been neutralized. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, a cheer erupted from Thompson's team. They had done it, they had stopped the Vanguard. But the victory was bittersweet. The battle was far from over. As the Dreadnought systems powered down, the Alliance fleet began to retreat. The Free Star Coalition had inflicted a devastating blow. The Vanguard, the very weapon that had been designed to crush the rebellion, was now useless. The Coalition had turned the tide of the war, but the cost had been high. Thousands of lives had been lost, and the galaxy's fate was still uncertain. Captain Thompson knew this was only one battle in a much larger war. The Alliance would regroup, rebuild, and come after them again. But humanity had proven something undeniable. They were not going to be crushed. They would fight, and they would win. As she stood in the command center of the Odyssey, staring out at the stars, Captain Thompson felt a deep sense of purpose. The rebellion had begun with a single spark, but now it was a roaring fire. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's will to survive, and it had seen the price of underestimating them. The final gamble had paid off. But the true fight, freedom for all, was just beginning. The Vanguard had fallen, and with it, the Alliance's greatest weapon. The strategic victory at the heart of the rebellion marked a turning point in the war, but the battle for the galaxy was far from over. Humanity and its allies had proven themselves resilient, and the Alliance, though wounded, was not yet defeated. But as the dust settled and the wreckage of the Vanguard drifted through the void, something remarkable began to unfold. A new galaxy was beginning to take shape, one where hope, freedom, and defiance were no longer whispers in the dark, but a rallying cry for all to hear. In the weeks following the destruction of the Vanguard, the Free Star Coalition rallied its forces, fortifying their newly liberated worlds and pushing forward with renewed determination. The damage the Alliance had inflicted was still fresh, but now there was a clear path forward. Humanity had won the respect of countless other species, and many now saw the humans not as invaders, but as liberators. The coalition's ranks swelled with soldiers, civilians, and leaders from all over the galaxy, all of them unified by one thing: the desire to break free from the tyranny of the Galactic Alliance. Captain Thompson, once just a military leader, had become a symbol of resistance. Her name was known across the stars, a beacon of the fight for a better future. Yet, she knew that true victory would not be won through military conquest alone. The galaxy's future depended on rebuilding what had been torn apart, and that required something more than just defeating the Alliance. It required healing. The Free Star Coalition began to take steps toward forging a new kind of government, one built on equality, autonomy, and respect for all species, no matter their size or strength. The idea of a galactic republic began to take shape, with humanity at its heart but open to all who shared the vision of a more just and peaceful galaxy. It wasn't a utopia, and it wouldn't be easy, but it was a start, a first step toward something that could be built to last. Captain Thompson stood before a gathering of leaders from all over the galaxy, both human and alien, who had come together to discuss the future of their newfound alliance. The war was not over, but they had weathered the storm, and now it was time to build something that would endure. Today, we stand on the precipice of a new era, Thompson began, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had fought for. The Galactic Alliance sought to crush us, to erase our spirit. But they underestimated one thing: humanity doesn't give up. And now, we stand together, not as conquerors, but as partners. Together, we can build a galaxy where freedom and hope are not luxuries, but rights. There was a murmur of agreement, nods, and smiles exchanged between the representatives of the various species present. The war had forged bonds that would last far beyond the battlefield. The coalition had shown what it was capable of, not just in battle, but in diplomacy, in forging a new path where peace and justice were more than just ideals. They were attainable goals. But there were still threats to face. The Alliance was far from broken. While they had suffered a major setback, their leadership was still intact, and there were factions within their ranks that would not accept defeat. Many of the most hardline members of the Council were already plotting their next moves, intent on restoring the old order at any cost. The coalition would have to remain vigilant, continuing to build its strength and defend the freedoms it had won. Yet, as Thompson looked out at the leaders gathered before her, she saw something she had never seen before: a united galaxy. It wasn't perfect, and the road ahead would be long and difficult, but it was a start. They had taken down a giant, and now they were preparing to show the rest of the universe what could happen when the oppressed fought for their freedom. "You've shown me something I never expected," Liaros, the Zorn ambassador, said as he approached Thompson after the gathering. "I have watched your species fight, and I have seen your strength. But more than that, I've seen your heart. You fight not just for yourselves, but for all of us. The galaxy is changed because of you." Thompson gave a small smile. "We fight for freedom, for everyone. That's what makes us human." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the galaxy began to rebuild. The Free Star Coalition, now an ever-expanding republic of sovereign worlds, took its first steps toward truly unifying the galaxy. There were many challenges ahead, and not all of them would be solved with diplomacy or military might. The scars of war ran deep, and old grudges would take time to heal. But the foundation was laid, and the galaxy was on a new trajectory, one that no longer bent to the will of the Galactic Alliance. Humanity had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it could overcome impossible odds. And in the process, they had inspired the galaxy to do the same. The war was over. But the journey toward lasting peace had only just begun. As Captain Thompson looked out at the stars once more, she felt the weight of the future pressing on her shoulders. But it was a weight she bore with pride. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength, and now they would see its heart. The true test had just begun, whether they could not only fight for freedom but sustain it. The galaxy was no longer the domain of the Galactic Alliance. It was a new galaxy, one where humanity, and all those who believed in freedom, would stand tall, never again to be underestimated. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and humanity, once dismissed as an afterthought, had become the galaxy's greatest hope.